Know this. Introducing the original blood clot podcast, not players. Soothing semantic. Special dedication. All the way from New York. Boom. Yeah, man. SWOT semantic. Yeah, me know. Boom. Soothing semantic. Yeah, me know. Big ups to the man. Soothing semantic.
On another episode of Soothing Semantics, I'm your host, Rafi Pinsky. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, comment, tell your friends, tell your grandparents, and here we are. Ralph, how you doing, bro? Thanks for coming on the episode.
Thank you.
Absolutely, man. So I've heard quite a lot about you, man. A couple of people at the office think well of you. You don't come too often, but whenever you're around, I just see this very, very large fellow walk in, and I know you've been doing a lot of you're working on a lot of flips. I don't know how long you've been doing it, so we'll get into it in the episode. But you also run a team with Lee.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So for whoever doesn't know, Lee Rosa is in the office as well where I work. He has a real estate team. They own the real estate team together. Lee has been on my podcast, so make sure to check out Lee Rosa. And so go into it, man. How did you start out as a realtor? And, we'll kind of go into from the beginning stages up until where you're holding now.
Sure. When
you got the Porsche, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. I'm more than happy to share how I got there. So the way my real estate career started is kind of the same way it's at right now. I kind of did a full circle. So I'll explain. I graduated college, and I had roommates at the time. And my idea was we were 4 roommates, each splitting the rent. So we figured, okay, why don't we go ahead and buy a house? I'll bring my roommates with me. They'll help me pay the mortgage, okay? And in a couple years when the values go up, I'll go ahead and sell it for a profit. So my challenge was I had the idea, I had the plan, I just needed the capital. So I went ahead and asked my mom. I said, hey, could you lend me $40,000? I'll go ahead and buy this investment. I told her the whole idea. Without hesitation, she said, sure, here you go. 2 years later, I implemented the plan. We bought the house. We got the roommates. They paid for the mortgage, and then I was able to sell it.
But you were free. Did you have to contribute as well, or their rent was covering the mortgage for you?
Their rent was not only covering the mortgage. I was actually able to buy a motorcycle and cover the payment of the motorcycle along with the rent. So I was living the lifestyle, working at a very low wage in IT at the time, and I was making ends meet by having the roommates, and on top of that, I was able to have a toy paid for by.
It's fantastic. Where was the house located, and how much?
It was in Orlando. At the time, this was 2003. I bought the property at I think it was like $132,000. Okay. And new construction, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you couldn't find anything like that.
Very nice. What was the mortgage rate at that point?
I think the mortgage I think it was like $615, something like that. And I think I was bringing in like $900 or $1,000 between the roommates. So
that's awesome.
It was a pretty good gig. Sold it, made doubled the investment profit, gave my mom back her money plus her return, and then I went and did it again. This was me just having an idea but not having really real estate experience or business experience. And so
Wait, how old were you at the time? You might have mentioned.
I was 23. I just graduated college. Got into my field of work, which was IT. Realized very quickly that was not a good fit for me. So I wanted to transition into real estate investing. And so I went ahead and got my license, initially thinking that I would just collect the commission from every investment property I made and pocket that. What I found was that real estate was actually a perfect fit. I was trying to get into sales. I was trying to get, have more control of my economic benefit from what I do. And IT was a little bit limited for me based on my skill set. So I got my license. I started to sell real estate at the time for Century 21. And then I was trying to buy real estate investments as I was trying to also learn the sales side of the business. And shortly after that, the real estate market crashed, 2008.
2008.
I was over leveraged. I didn't know any better. I was taught that real estate can only go up. It would never go down. And so I was too greedy, like most people at the time. And I had 80-20 loans on everything. I was overextended. I had no savings. And so quickly things went down fast and I lost all the properties either to short sale or foreclosure. Then at that point is really when my real estate training and experience began, because now I had to learn how to sell real estate in a market where real estate wasn't popular. Nobody wanted to do anything with real estate. And even if they wanted to sell their property, 1 in every 3 homeowners were underwater. So hardly anybody had equity. And that's really where I kind of cut my teeth into the real estate market.
It's so crazy. Because I was honestly so young at that point. The crash didn't really affect me. So I was still in high school at the time. But everyone's telling me. So how were realtors managing at that point?
They changed careers. We had, at the time, in the board of realtors that I was at, I believe we had something like 24,000 realtors, something along those lines. And then when the market crashed, we went down to 9,000 realtors. And so when that happened, a lot of people changed industries, a lot of people left real estate, and I had a decision to make. Do I change the business, or do I perfect the business and figure out a way to get out? And more importantly, whose problems can I solve in this market? Nobody wanted to invest. Nobody had cash. Everyone was scrambling, and the reset button was being pressed for everyone. Everyone was going to bankruptcy, foreclosure. So at that point, I started to understand and learn the short sale business. And when I started to work with short sales, I was working with investors, and I was working now on the other side, the reverse side of the business, where people had put their money in and now they can't get out. And so we were able to negotiate successfully over 100 short sales at the time. And our average sales price was like $73,000 at the bottom of the market. And as I started to lose the properties through foreclosure or short sale, it was a blessing in disguise, because what I was able to do is I was able to pay off all my debt. I was able to get rid of all of the overhead that I had that was just eating me alive on a monthly basis, and I was able to start to save. And with the money that I saved, I bought 1 condo cash, then I bought 2 condos cash, then I bought 3 condos cash, and then I worked my way back into the real estate market. Then at that point in time,
how old were you at this point?
I was 29,
wow.
29, 30, and at that point is when Lee and I finally decided to join forces, and we said we're going to move down to South Florida. Now is as good a time as any. The market's kind of neutral. At 2010, it was neutral. People were just starting to get back on their feet. FHA was the only financing pretty much anybody was getting at the time, because nobody had enough cash to buy conventional, so on and so forth. So we made the move down here, and we opened up RGT in South Florida.
That's awesome. I'm trying to think about what things would have been like if I got into real estate at that point. Maybe I wouldn't have even done it. So what do you think are the shifts? I want to get into like RGT up here from you, because I've heard from Lee. What do you think a realtor should do, especially if they're new, but also if they're experienced? What kind of shift or pivot do they have to make if they want to stay in the business? So specifically as a new realtor, say you got in the business in 2007, so you're a year in the business, 2008 hits. What would you do? What would be some strategies in order to stay afloat and hopefully succeed if you're in that predicament?
So we're going to get to in a little bit what happened after we started down here, which goes into what you just asked.
Because like now, so many people are wondering if we're going to fall into that in the next little while.
The biggest trap that I fell into initially, and it wasn't into real estate, it so happened to be into the IT businesses, that I decided to go into the IT business for one reason, and that was back when I was in college in 2000. You know what happened in 2000? Maybe you don't, because you're too young. That was the internet. That was a shift from the internet, the Y2K. Everything was shifting over and shifting to being online. And so all of the money was going into tech and IT. So I went into IT because I thought that's where you make money. That's where you make a lot of money. So I was chasing the money, and that was the mistake that I made. Because what I quickly realized was I wasn't willing to do what it took to be the best at what I was, nor was it bringing me satisfaction and joy to do that in IT. So I would not be able to reach financially my goals because A, I wasn't good enough, B, I didn't have the talent, and C, I didn't want to put forth the work ethic that I would need in order to make it in IT.
Because money was the priority. It wasn't there was no passion about. Okay.
Right. And then I got into real estate, and of course, everyone gets into real estate to make money. But the thing that pulled me through the whole market crashing was the love for business and sales. I love to be in a deal. My favorite part of real estate is to be negotiating a deal, to be in the contract.
Man.
Yeah,
I love that.
Having different personalities, different wants, different needs, different dynamics. It's like playing a little bit of poker versus playing a little bit of therapist. Right.
It's so
versus playing like a surgeon. It's all together. You have to be calculated. You have to have the right tools. You have to work with different variety of personalities and different motivations.
Do well under pressure.
While under pressure.
Yeah.
Right. And so so that's what pulled me through the real estate market and the crash, was the fact that I had found, my calling and where I could really thrive, and I was willing to put in the work. Because in 2009, when your average commission check was $1,500 and the average days on the market was a year, you would work a whole entire year to close a file that's going to pay you $1,500 to $2,500. If you didn't love what you did, you would easily find something else to do. And so I was fortunate to go through that time, because I was able to really test, my limits and what I was willing to do and what I was able to do. And then fast forward, we move into South Florida. The market starts to get a little bit better. We've already kind of established our roots. And then I start to really focus my energy and time back to where it all started, real estate investing.
So you were able to do what you did, kind of swim through that current working against you, be able to come out on the other side, and then get into investment. Okay.
Make no mistake, between 2008 and 2011, there was no real estate investing. The real estate investing happening were people that had very deep pockets or were paying all cash. But in today's market, I would say about 90% of the investors would be wiped out and no longer in business based on what we went through back then. So that wasn't a big enough space for me to play in. So I had to go where I was needed. And I was needed with, the investors that were in a bad spot, that needed to be helped out of their current financial situation. And so I needed to learn how to negotiate short sales. I needed to know how to help people sell in a downward market. I needed to learn how to help people buy their first home, buy their second home. So all these different needs back then we took for granted. Now it's like those people are fighting to get in the market now and they can't. So the market always has a way of correcting, right? So right now we're at like the opposite of what we were in 2009. 2009, people were so thankful and grateful for an FHA buyer, to pay the buying agent 4% commission and to offer the buyer 3% concessions. Now you get shot offering that in this market, right? The commissions are 2.5%,
right?
And you have to pay $10,000-$20,000 over the appraisal, and you better not ask for a discount off the price, and you're definitely not getting any concessions. So we're kind of bipolar opposite of what we were.
Sure.
So now, as we went down here, I started to think, how do I get back into the real estate investment space? And what I realized is I didn't want to do it the way I did it before, because the way I did it before was over leveraged. There was really no value I was adding. I was just buying a property and waiting for it to go up in value. And I was not really getting it at a discount either. I was paying full retail. So this time around, I wanted to understand how to buy a property, add value, and sell it for a profit. So that's what got me into the real estate investing in the auction, and that's where I started. So my stepmom was a real estate appraiser, is still a real estate appraiser for the last 30 plus years. And she was always talking about real estate investing. In fact, she's the one who influenced me to get my license back in 2003. So I told her, look, now that I'm down here, we should consider this opportunity that she had presented to me, which was buying at the auction. So that's how the whole real estate investment started with us, or was revived in 2014. We started buying properties at the real estate auction. We would buy them at 50 cents on the dollar. We would do the rehab. We would put it on the market, and we would sell it for a profit.
Okay, and you're still doing this, I imagine.
We still, and then of course, like in any business, you evolve. So we did that for about a year and a half. We had to bring in investors, and they would bring in capital. We would share in the profit. And then as time went on, two things happened. Number one, we started to gain more capital, so we were needing the investors less. And number two, the auction dried up. So all of a sudden now, what we were getting at 50 cents on the dollar was now being sold for 85 cents on the dollar. And there was not enough room to invest and make a profit, because most of the foreign money was coming in and just they were parking their money here. So we had to quickly adjust and pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did was we started to, at that point, that's where I really started to perfect my craft of negotiating and finding the deals. And that was with finding off-market properties and finding deals that needed to be sold to an investor that weren't necessarily attractive to an end user or a retail buyer.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to find properties and started to work with different people outside of the auction, and then that essentially drew me to the BRRRR business, which the BRRRR business is buying investment properties just like fixing and flipping. The only difference is instead of selling it for profit, you're going to keep it and refinance your equity out and then repeat the process again. So I started that business with my partner Ayana, which she's also on part of RGT, Real Estate Home Experts. And we started essentially starting that. And it was from the same philosophy of buying properties at a discount, adding value through appreciation, through improvements, forcing the appreciation, and then selling it for a profit or refinancing it and repeating the process again.
So how do you decide whether you want to BRRRR something or get rid of it?
Great question. So the BRRRR model and the fix and flip model are very alike. The only two differences really that you have to be careful with is the higher your price point, the lower the debt service. The debt service meaning what you collect in rent versus what your monthly obligations are financially. Okay, so if you get a nicer home in a nicer area, you're going to pay a higher price, and the rent is not going to reflect that nicer price. So you would technically have to put more money down, or you would have to take a negative cash flow position to offset, the nice area, if that makes any sense. So you want to stay under $250,000 purchase price, and you want to make sure that the rental income is going to cover all your expenses and then give you a buffer on top of that.
Okay.
We probably would have to do a whole new podcast just to explain
the BRRRR
process.
I have this. Thank God. I mean, I've come in contact with a lot of people who do this. I want to get into this as soon as possible, which I know I will. But I mean, there's so much to talk about, right? There's so much to discuss. I follow a few people on Instagram, and I really try to. But ultimately, I feel like because you've gone through this during the recession, no matter what you hear and what you learn, it's all you have to get on the field. So you can kind of.
You got to be in the game.
You got to be in the game,
win
yeah.
the game.
Right.
And you also have to bring value. And my value is my experience in real estate investing, and my ability to just underwrite deals and to make sure my winning percentage. Because you make a wrong move on the acquisition side, and when you buy a property, and you could be out for the next foreseeable future or until you're able to raise new capital. And so it's very important that when you're buying a house, you make your money when you buy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to make sure you buy right, and you have to make sure that you stick to the budget or whatever renovation schedule that you're trying to achieve. If you miss those numbers, you could be out of business, or you could be stuck in a deal until the market catches up to your price. Or worst case scenario, you can't sell it, you overpaid for it, you can't rent it because your price point's higher, and then you might lose the property.
That's what's also scary. If you flip it and you have a tough time selling. What was kind of your
That's
worst?
always a possibility.
So then, I mean, hopefully you rent it at that point. I mean, I guess. What have been some of your very difficult experiences post-recession, say in the past few years? Yeah. What have been properties you regret buying or decisions you regret making?
So some of the challenges I've had has been new construction. It's something we wrestle with all the time, my partners and I. Sometimes, we'll do one and we make a lot of money and we're like, oh, that's fantastic. And sometimes we'll do one and it takes too long and we lose money and we're like, we'll never do that again. So it's something we're still trying to learn, but you're always trying to evolve and broaden and expand your horizon in the real estate investment space. And that means that when you do that, you are setting yourself up to possibly make a mistake. So our mistakes have been construction from the ground up. We weren't really prepared to handle the construction from the ground up, and the timing took too long. And so we had to take losses on a couple of properties that took full plans and permitting, and that probably the whole entire project took over 2 years.
So with pre-construction, you're still looking at a price of up to $250, or things changed at that point?
We were buying a vacant land at that time, and so the particular deal that I'm talking about was a lot for $250,000, but the timing was a little off, and it took way too long to get the plans approved, and we ended up throwing in the towel and selling it. We sold it for what we bought it for, but the holding cost, permitting cost, and everything else killed us. So we had a 6-figure loss. Wow. Just on that one. Fast forward, in the same neighborhood, good news is we did come across another property that we were able to pick up, buy, and flip, and we made a 6-figure profit.
How much are you putting into the actual property to build and do all that? Meaning, how do you kind of work that out?
Typically, it's about, based on the math that I did, anywhere between $50 and $75 a foot. Okay, and that's cosmetic updates and upgrades without any structural changes to the property. In other words, if it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, most of the time it's going to be a 3-bedroom, 1-bath remodel.
Well, what if you're buying land? I'm saying it sounds like you've bought land and built the property yourself. You've done that?
We were going to do that,
Okay.
and then we ended up selling the lot because we were just taking too long to get those
Okay,
plans
like you said, right? Okay.
We have a couple other projects we're currently working on, and what we're essentially doing is taking a house that's about 100 years old, and we're turning it from a 2-1 to a 4-3. And we're adding to the structure. We're bringing it up to today's selling standard, and we're doing it in neighborhoods that can absorb that type of an upgrade. So we spend $200,000, $250,000 on the renovation, but then we can sell the property for what we bought it at, plus that $250,000, plus hopefully a 6-figure profit.
Very interesting. What kind of neighborhoods now in South Florida do you think are, maybe you're giving away your secrets here, but ultimately they feel there's enough business for everybody. Very few people do it anyhow. What do you think, based on market, are good areas or good upcoming areas to do this?
Yeah, I mean, there's no secret, and most people have the same model business plan. I can give my business plan to somebody else. Doesn't necessarily mean that they can execute on it, right? There's a lot that goes into it, but to answer your question, I personally like to stick into the areas that are the neighborhoods that haven't been touched in 30, 40 years, okay? The 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that doesn't have central AC. And that could be anywhere between Brownsville, Miami Gardens, West Park, Homestead, all those areas, which are typically lower priced areas that are quickly now catching up to the rest of the market. We've also transitioned to other areas that are decent areas, like a city of Miami, like Shenandoah. We've done Oakland Park, Fort Lauderdale.
Shenandoah is becoming very popular, isn't it?
It has been. So we go into those areas, but everything is by case basis, and it really comes down to the numbers. The numbers have to make sense based on what we buy it at versus what money we put into it versus how much profit we're willing to take to call it a successful flip, and how long is it going to take to do all of that. We take all that into consideration, and we essentially go anywhere, but we like to stay under the $250,000 acquisition price. Sometimes we'll push it up to $300,000, but our niche is usually the lower end.
I hear across the board, though, from many flippers, that's what they look at. They look in the 200s.
Look, that's where you can add the most value, to be honest with you. Because if you think about most of these neighborhoods that have 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes that haven't been renovated in 40 years, they are in desperate need of an upgrade, right? And the people that have lived there, they've lived there so long, and they don't have the resources or the means to put $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in renovations in their property. So we wait for the right opportunity, whether those people move out, they have to relocate, whatever the case may be. At that point, we take that opportunity to buy the property that normally would not be able to be financeable to the average person. We take it and we renovate it, force appreciation through the upgrades, and then we sell it for a profit. And that's why we stay on the low end. And in the higher end, we aren't afraid to go at the higher end. The challenge with the higher end is that you might have a lot more variables going on. In a middle of the road neighborhood, you might have a house that has some upgrades, a house that's fully upgraded, and then a house that needs upgraded. So your room for error is a little bit higher, in my opinion. Your holding cost is a little bit higher. Your risk is a little bit higher. So the lower you go, the lower the risk, because affordability is an issue in South Florida. So if you go to those areas that affordability is a problem, then you tend to hedge yourself a little bit with being able to exit and getting it sold for top dollar.
What are the pros, though, of going for a higher price, say 500, 600?
Higher profit. I mean, I have friends in the business that all they're going to do is the higher 6-figure profit flips, the risk is higher, the rehab cost is higher, the holding cost is higher, the holding time is higher. Everything is higher, but then the return is higher. So you just have to make a decision on what what section of the business you're going to participate in, and have conviction in your business. Have the finances and the means to back up your plan, and then take action.
You think it's fine to somewhat dabble? Meaning, when I say dabble, I don't mean to half-ass it, but maybe to attack those 200s and then take some of those 1.2s or those 750s as well? Or do you think it's better to just choose one and double down?
It depends on what your goals are going to be and how you're going to bring value. But I really haven't done $1 million flips. I know people that do. But that leads me into the next evolution of my business. We talked about fix and flip. We talked about the burr. And then what I just recently did a couple years ago is I realized, based on my knowledge and my ability to find deals and underwrite deals and execute these investment properties, I started a mentee program. And the mentee program is I would take in a select handful of investors that were willing to listen to what I had to say and willing to do it the way I said we would do it. And then I would help them find properties to flip, walk them through the entire process, and make sure they sell and make a profit. Kind of like a coach, if you will.
Hopefully, I will be one of your students.
So that's, and I'd be more than happy to help you.
Appreciate that.
So that's what I do as well. Is I coach and mentor investors that are missing a piece of the puzzle. And most of the time, someone is missing something, and my job is to hopefully accelerate your experience and get into profitability and avoid the major pitfalls that the newbie investors or newer investors might not see coming. Some of my investors lack the knowledge of underwriting the deal. Other investors lack how to put together the vendors, like the hard money lenders or the insurance people, or any other pieces of the puzzle that will help them, get to the finish line and make profit. Some investors are great at actually doing the upgrades, but they don't understand other aspects of it. So my job is to, wherever you're deficient, plug in the hole,
Right.
give you confidence, and help you leverage your strengths and hedge your weaknesses. That's
great.
really what the mentee program is all about.
Sounds awesome. Now, when it comes to your entire business model with flips and burr, what parts of the business do you really have a full head on? Meaning, what parts of the business are you fully involved in, and which parts are you delegating? I presume paperwork you have someone taking care of. What are you kind of always on top of?
So my philosophy in business has always been, partner up with someone who's going to complement you, and someone who's going to really fill in the gaps where you're deficient or where you're just, leaving opportunities on the table. And in the regular retail business, Lee helped me fill that gap initially with, the structure, back end side of the business and the buyer side of the business. And then the burr business, Ayana, she helped me with the organizational side and the implementation of the model, right? And then my stepmom, Rita, on the fix and flip, she helped me with the whole entire project management and the contacts that she had at the auction and the real estate investment space, and her overall knowledge of, appraising properties. So they all have different skill sets. And then last but not least, Priscilla, she's our executive assistant, and she's basically the one in charge of essentially the whole entire operation. If you can think of, there's a lot of connections in between each separate business, but they all kind of bleed together in the transaction side, and she really holds everything together and makes sure that everything gets done and nothing slips through the cracks. So always just partnering up, in my opinion, with the people that are going to help you fill those holes is going to help you excel and exceed faster. So full circle to your question, what do I do? Do I delegate? Yes, my job is to delegate to everyone who do things better than I do. And the one thing, my superpower is underwriting the deal, dealing with the people directly, and negotiating the deal. Everything else,
You want to be on the front end.
Yeah, everyone else helps me execute everything else. detail oriented. That's not me. So I have a lot of people in my organization that help me with the details, that help me get it through the finish line, that help me pick through everything to make sure that I'm not missing any of that, and to help me stay on schedule.
Well, real quick, to interject, just hold your thought. When you're talking about detail oriented, if we're talking about the actual design of the house, do you put any thought or work into that, or you have someone, an interior designer, or someone who's worrying about what the kitchen should look like, living area, and etc.?
So Rita would be a good example of that. She's got a real gift and knack for interior design and how things should lay out. And then other contractors we work on usually have a better idea of how to do that. But that's a very small piece of what I do. That's going to be more on the rehab side or on the renovation side. When I talk about details, I'm talking about an addendum being signed, or making sure we get a walkthrough done, or contracts is expiring, make sure we're still in contract. Those little details, I would not be able to scale if I had to take care of all those.
Sure.
So I'm fortunate to have a strong team behind me, that alongside of me, that's going to help me get to the finish line and pull everyone else with us along the way.
Sounds awesome. Have you had people you worked with in the investment space, meaning not just other investors, but people as, Rita or Priscilla, or other people that worked for you, with you prior, that you had to get rid of? It's a very straightforward question, but meaning my question ultimately is, did that happen, or were you with the same people throughout the entire process?
I always value relationships, and I want them to last. So luckily, most of the people that I'm in business with, I've been in business with for a long time. Lee and I have been in business for almost a decade. Priscilla has been with us for almost a decade.
Wow.
Rita and myself have been together in the fix and flip for about 7-8 years.
Wow.
Ayana and I have been together now doing Burr for about 2 years. So my goal is to, have long-term lasting relationships, to have the right fit and to work together. I don't want to just use someone and then move on to the next best thing. I want to grow together with them. So that's the goal when picking partners and when picking people. And we have had to get rid of people like executive assistants or people on the team that just weren't the right fit. But we tend to hold on a little bit longer than we should to those, because we really want to try to give them benefit of the doubt and try to make it work. But essentially, they'll weed themselves out. Either we'll get rid of them, but most of the time they'll end up quitting, because just the friction of not getting it done and not having the willingness to work through it will drive someone away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's either it's going to work long term, or we're going to learn in the short term what's going to happen with them and whether or not they're going to work out.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, there's so much to talk about. We've gone into detail on other things. We've also touched the surface on a lot of things. That there's so, like you said, it would definitely take another podcast.
We can have a series if you want.
Right.
Come back and we can talk one day all about the mentee program, one day about the Burr business, one day about fix and flip, one day about retail real estate. But they all kind of come together, and that's the real estate space. And whether you want to be an investor, or you just want to own a home, or you just want to be a real estate professional, there's a lot of things that you can unpackage from each business that will apply to the others. A lot of the fundamentals are the same.
Okay, so here's a question that I'd like to know. I'm not asking for a friend, I'm asking for me. As a newer realtor, I'm a year in. I've closed some transactions. It's been a nice year, far from good enough. What do you say, and it's ultimately up to me to determine, but what would you suggest as somebody who's new? What would you feel is a safe, fuck the word safe, but in the sense of an intelligent thing to do, where you're closing X amount of transactions a month, or you're making you're making X amount of money a month, where you feel like it's a smart idea to go in and make the move? Now, I know as an investor, you can put a small chunk into someone else's. Tom is ready to flip a property, says, give me 40 grand and you'll make X amount of money. What do you think, as far as being, for the most part, the main or one of the main people in that flip? When do you think is a good time to kind of make it happen?
Well, first thing I would tell you is, if you're a newer agent or newer to the business, and this is the one common mistake that most people do, is they start to get a little bit of success and they stop doing the very thing that got them successful. Let's say you're starting to work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and you're starting to really put them in contract and closing escrow, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to try to list property. And I'm not saying that listing property is the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying that if you start to list property and completely neglect what got you there in the first place, that's the biggest mistake. So what I would tell you is continue to focus on what has brought you success up until this point. Double down on that. And then, like you said, not nearly as successful as you'd like to be. Get it to the point where you're overly successful and crush whatever goals you had and exceeded those goals. And then start to ladder into your whatever the goal is, which might be real estate investing. And believe it or not, being in retail real estate is going to help you. The more transactions you're in, it will help you and groom you to become a great real estate investor. So you can still get involved in
That's what I love about it. It's all intertwined, man.
What's that?
It's all intertwined. That's why not only do I enjoy real estate sales for the simple fact of loving whatever it entails, I love that it teaches you so much about investment. So you're not just someone who, you say you work in IT, you're shifting over to a completely different field. You're already in the water.
Yeah,
you just have to shift over to the other kind of.
It teaches you investing. It teaches you how to work with people. It teaches you the business. It teaches you how to get into contracts, out of contracts. It's all going to be applicable. And the best thing you can do for your real estate investment career is to be in real estate transactions.
Sure.
Get as many of those under your belt as possible. Get yourself in a variety of different situations and scenarios. So that way, when you're in the investment space, you're not completely thrown back or surprised when you run into a challenge.
Sure. Because
you've
seen it already.
You have a little bit of experience. You have a little bit of miles on you.
Right.
Versus if you jump right into real estate investment space and you haven't done, let's say 100 transactions, you're going to get scenarios that come at you, and now you're trying to run a real estate business and try to understand real estate. So your priority is spread, and then your efficiency goes down tremendously.
That's awesome advice, man. So thank you for that. Yeah. I love what you said about remembering what you did to get there. So I'm coached by Aaron Novello. Really love his coaching. I just had the meeting with him, and he always talks about when you start to get busy, when transactions start to happen and you have, say, 5-10 transactions happening at once, you're pending on all those transactions, a lot of people they focus on all of those 10 transactions and stop prospecting.
Correct.
So what happens is 3 of those may die, the remaining 7 close, and now you're back to nothing. So that graph kind of you're going up. So he used a roller coaster analogy. You're going up that roller coaster. You're about to hit the drop, right? So as soon as everything closes or a few deals die, you're back to square one again. And too many realtors forget to continue to prospect and build that. So even if you do hit a bit of a slope, it's an upward slope, meaning it'll go like that as opposed to. Right. So I that's how I took what you said, and I really think it's valuable.
So, Aaron comes from a background, a Mike Ferry background, and, Mike Ferry always teaches you to, don't listen to that voice in your head. And that's another thing that as realtors, we tend to spend a lot of time on, is that voice in your head saying, your time would be better spent doing this, or this isn't working, or you sound stupid saying it this way. And really constantly having a conversation with yourself is actually not helpful. And that's what people do. So what they do is they get a bunch of deals under contract, and then they start to say, I better work on those deals because they better close. And then they stop funneling the deals back in. So Aaron's absolutely correct, where you have to get comfortable with repetitious boredom. You have to get comfortable with doing the same thing.
Lee taught me this. Lee was the first person who taught me this, man.
Right.
So
again, what got you to those 10 pendings? Keep doing that. Don't stop doing that.
Right.
And believe it or not, the 10 pendings will close in spite of you. Okay? Because you can't want it more than that buyer or seller. So if that buyer and seller want it bad enough, they're going to kick and scream, and then eventually you're going to jump in there and fix what they have to fix. But by you coddling and babying those deals, the more you touch the deal, the better chance that deal has of falling apart.
That's also why I'm so glad I have a TC, and I hired one right away, because now I'm not micromanaging every little thing. So I'm forced to kind of allow certain things to be taken care of outside of meaning I can oversee things, but I don't do that. I trust that the person who's doing it is doing a good job, and honestly he has been. And this way I can focus what I need to focus on, and I have to have that trust. Same way with my editing. I know that once this episode is done, I've trusted. I have 55 episodes already. You're the 56th. Everything's been going great. Who knows? That episode, that editing might go to shit. Anything's possible, but I have to trust and give him that opportunity. Mostly because I know he'll do a 100 times better job than I will. So that's the first, major key.
It goes back to income producing versus income servicing, right? And when you're income servicing, you're doing the customer service. You're taking care of the client. That's the most overrated thing in real estate. People think that by taking care of the client and servicing them, that's your job. It's not your job. Your job is to find them a house. Well, they found the house. Get out of the way and let it close, right? Hire other people to help you get to the finish line. Go back to doing what you're doing, which is finding the next deal for the next client.
I think very few realtors really understand this.
Well, they watch HGTV, and HGTV, the roadmap is spend all your time putting out fires, and if you have no fires to put out, create the drama, so then you can be the solution to the drama, and you can become the hero at the end of the story. And they see that because that's good for TV, terrible for the real estate investment space or the real estate space, because you think that that's what real life is like. You're supposed to have fun and be excited and do all these fun things at work, when the reality is 90% of your day is very boring. You're sitting there by yourself. It's a lonely business. You're making calls. You're getting rejected. You're getting voicemails. You're in your office space. It's not fun. It's not sexy. It's not something that people would jump into the business to do if they knew that was the reality. So they see it on TV, they see it on YouTube, they hear about it on Instagram, right? Because people only post the highlights.
So accurate, man.
Right. So they post the highlight reels and they say that's what it's all about. But what they don't see is the training that goes behind it. It's just like if you were a professional athlete, you get to see them on game day and you're like, wow, I want to be that. But what you don't see is the 60, 70 hours a week of just grinding, beating up your body, putting in the work when nobody's watching. And that's real estate's the same way.
Right, 100%. But I think you would agree that after those countless hours and years of repetitious boredom, you can get to a place where you've fucked up so many times that you eventually things become a lot easier, right?
Yep. There was a saying that I always heard was your success will take longer than you think it will take, but you'll get it sooner than you deserve. And what it comes down to is whatever the time frame is that you think that's enough time to put in to start to reap the rewards or successes of your labor, it's going to take longer. So you just got to keep going, and then you'll get to the point where all of a sudden the rewards keep coming, and then they keep coming at a faster pace than you're putting out there. When that happens, everyone's timing is different. For me personally, I was putting in the work from 2005 up to 2016, 17. And then finally in 2020 is when I started to really see the rewards come in. And 2020 was my best year in real estate, in the real estate space. And then 2021 is going to be better than 2020. So awesome. It took that long to get to the point where you're finally starting to reap the rewards. So everyone's different. I know people that have been in real estate for 2 years and have just destroyed it, knocked it out of the park. Some people take longer. Some people mature faster. Everyone's journey is different. The key is the long game.
It's a long game.
Yep.
I saw something recently. I think Aaron actually posted it. It spoke about either Google or Amazon hitting $1 trillion, becoming $1 trillion company, and it took, say, 15, 20 years, but then their 21st, they made $2 trillion. Right. So it's the same.
It's like the saying, the hardest million to make is your first million.
Right.
Making your second million is a lot easier. And
I see that with my views, by the way. I mean, it took me a while. It took me a couple of months to get close to 8,000 views on an episode, and then now I have 20. And this happened in like a month. I'm almost at 21,000.
Congrats.
Thank you, man. So it's it totally happened. It totally compounded. It's very cool.
Momentum. Don't underestimate momentum. It'll take you a long time to get there. Kind of the analogy you want to use is like a train. Mm-hmm. It takes a long time to get that train going, but when that train is going, it's hard to stop it. So you just got to keep pushing. Hopefully there's people out there that see value in what we're talking about, and if anyone has any suggestions on what they'd like to elaborate on, I'll come back. We'll talk more. I can talk forever about
Sounds
real estate
good.
investing. That's all I do. That's all
Awesome.
I ever talk about. And there's a lot to unpackage, but on the surface level, it sounds good. It sounds exciting. There's a lot. There's a lot that goes into the real estate investment space, but everyone can have their part in real estate investing. That's the nice part. There's not a one size fits all. You can have a real estate investor who wants to be passive, does not want anything to do with the details. You want someone who wants to put in the work but doesn't have the capital. You want someone who wants to be taught and mentored. So everyone has their own place in this real estate ecosystem, and I just hope to be a part of it.
Awesome. Are there any platforms, I mean, other than Instagram or Facebook, that you would, any websites, links, your mentorship that you'd want people to check out?
Sure.
We'll drop links for it.
Instagram is my most popular by far. I post, my rehab projects and what I'm looking at on a daily basis. You can find me on Facebook. My Instagram handle is rgoycoria, RGOICOURIA.
I'm going to add the links on the bottom.
Perfect. You have the links on the bottom, and then our website is rgtcells.com. But they can also reach out to you, and maybe we'll come out here for we can make this a regular occurrence. Maybe we can find a way to give back and have like just a real estate investment show, and we could just do it once a month, once a week, whatever you want to do. My goal is to be able to give back, and then hopefully, by giving, I can help someone, and in return, we can do business together in the future. So it always works its way out. It's just a matter of putting the energy out there.
Awesome. Okay. So again, Ralph, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you, man. I gained a tremendous amount of value. Hopefully, we're gonna keep in touch for the long haul and do business together. I'm really looking forward to it, man, because I'm aching to get into investment, man.
Sounds good. Maybe we can what's it called? We can chronicle. Is that the right word? Where we can the whole entire process, we can see the evolution of you as a real estate investor. We can sit down and talk about it. We can break it down. Man. We can look at the numbers. We can dissect the deal. We can see where my head's at, where your head's at, what the pitfalls were, what the pluses were, and what the outcome was.
Sounds good.
That would be pretty cool. We can do that.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, for me right now, I'm just focused on building the real estate business on the sales end and having a constant, say, at least for now, and going into my second year, at least one close a month. And that's not at all satisfactory for me, but that's not what I had in my first year. So I want to hit that goal and hopefully crush it even in my second year. So I want to have several every month. In June of this year, I had 3, which was nice, but I'm not counting on that.
And then
so
in July, how many did you have?
I think I had 1 in July.
So there you go. You have the ups and downs. Now you just have to stabilize it, right?
I just want to at least have 1 and feel like that isn't changing, and then just go from there.
There you go, and you'll do it. You have the right people around you. Just
for sure,
keep moving forward.
Absolutely. That's one thing I really am so happy. Aside from the podcast, I'm just very aggressive in trying to build that proximity and get as close to the people as possible. Because if you're stuck in a little room and you aren't meeting any of these people, you're kidding yourself. You really can't do it on your own. So, now that's really what I'm working on. This podcast is a great way to do it. So,
cool. Well, I wish you best of luck.
Thank you.
I'm excited to see the product.
I appreciate it, man. Okay. Guys, make sure to check out all of the social media links. Leave your comments if you have any questions. Hopefully, we'll have more episodes with Ralph, and we'll go deeper into the details of anything you want to talk about. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you on the next episode.